Well, good evening, fellow Bleoobi, and thank you very much for joining this webinar series. This is the first of a series of webinars intended for Bleoubis to benefit from the great potentials that we have amongst Bleoubis. My name is Bleoobi Yaukuonu B99, and I will be the moderator for this session. We have put together this webinar carefully to ensure that you benefit from participating. So by way of the order of the program, there will be an opening remark by the AAOBA president, Bleoobi Bruce Atta, and he will in turn also introduce the speaker, after which the speaker will do a 45-minute presentation, and then after that there will be a Q&A session, and there will also be a closing remark. Now, a few housekeeping rules for us to enjoy this session. Please, we ask that all microphones should be on mute. As much as possible, the producers will try to put everybody on mute. However, if your microphone is unmuted, please put it back on mute so that we can all hear the presentations. Now, also, please submit questions along the presentation by typing in the chat box. There is a chat box functionality in Zoom. We encourage all of you to type your questions in there so that when it's time for Q&A, we can read out the questions to the presenter. Please use the raise hand feature to draw the attention of the moderator and the producers. There is also a raise hand feature in the participants box, and you can use that to draw our attention. Finally, we crave your indulgence. Please do not share any content to disrupt the presentation because there will be a presentation by the speaker of the day. Now, before I will invite the AAOBA president, Mr. Bruce Atta, who will give us the opening remarks. But before he comes, we would like to take the official anthem to signal the official beginning of the program.
Kayaknya ya anyway. Kayaknya itu halo Indonesia. Oke.
Now that was a very beautiful rendition of the Bleoobi anthem, both the one that played before this one and this particular one. And this was done by Bleoobi Chris Fletcher. So we want to give him kudos, Bleoobi Chris Fletcher. Thank you very much for that beautiful anthem. Gentlemen, may we welcome the AAOBA president, Mr. Bruce Atta. Over to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you. Akraka. Akraka.
Blow.
Blow.
But you guys say we should move
Akraka.
Oh, please, let's go back to mute. Thank you.
You guys said we should mute our mics right now. You want us to respond?
Sorry, let's go back to
Should we mute our mics or not?
Please mute your mic.
Let's mute.
Blow.
Blow.
Blow. Hello, Bleoobi. I am Emmanuel Bruce Atta, President of AAOBA. Welcome to this section from digital financial services to e-everything. This webinar is a first in a series of where we'll be talking about, which is Shika. We are talking about services that puts the icing on the cake. I can imagine where we can get such information. So now let me introduce today's presenter. Bleoobi. Fred is a high-impact leader, technology planner, and executor of transformational projects for digital financial services. He's entrepreneurial in nature with a unique ability to apply more than 15 years of experience in telecommunications, mobile money, micro-lending, and e-commerce to solving practically any problem life throws at him. He is currently passionate about promoting financial inclusion using technology. Fred completed Accra Academy in 1999 and continued his education in the UK. Since then, he's been back and he's been part of most of the major telecom industries in Ghana. He's played a leadership role. I'm sure this presentation will be beneficial to all of us. So please help me, Bleoobi.
Hello, guys. I know your mics are on mute, and I don't want Mutumbo to start talking too much, so I'm just going to jump straight in. Thank you, Mr. Bruce Atta, for the nice introduction. It makes me look very good. I don't know who wrote that, but I think I should get that person to write my biography. I hope you can hear me clearly. If you cannot hear me, you just type something in the chat box, and I will be looking at it. Because earlier on when Mr. Brusetta was speaking, it wasn't very clear in some parts. I'm going to try and go very slowly so that you can hear me well. If you cannot hear anything, you want me to repeat it, just type in there and I'll try and go over it. I hope we're good to go. Yao, can I jump in now?
Yes, please, you can.
Okay.
So
right.
Go ahead and share.
Okay, so a bit of a disclaimer here. I think earlier on was mentioned all the industries that I've worked in and who I've worked for. For today, I am not representing any of them. I'm not representing any of my employers or my current employers or my previous ones. This is my experiences from living in the industry. I have at least 1 or 2 NDAs covering what I'm allowed to share and what I'm not allowed to share. So everything that I share would be something that you could, on your own, go online or call up the call center of any of these institutions and get the information, or things that I've gleaned off the internet or just from living, really. So it's not anything that I'm going to come to it and say I'm an expert in anything. Most of the experiences that I'm going to share, you probably have had the same thing. It's probably just putting a bunch of slides together and talking you through it, right? What I'm going to talk about is going to be in, let me share my screen. Okay, all right. So I'm going to tell a story, right, about what we have learned in 2020 so far in going digital, right? We've heard a lot of things. If you've been online, we've heard a lot of things about how the internet was going to change us, how going digital is going to change things. And I want to tell a story from at least maybe early 2000s, from 2000 until 2020. These are the years that I have been most active in the digital space, as either as somebody who's consuming the internet or somebody who's working with it in my personal life. So I'm going to try to tell a story which is mostly me, and I hope that some of it is also you. So it's fine if you disagree with some of them. It's fine if you don't see it the same way. But I will, when I finish telling the story, hopefully we can find some middle ground and something to discuss with in the second half of the presentation. Okay, all right. So we're in 2020, and I know a lot of people made a lot of specific plans on how 2020 was going to be for them. I don't know whether you made your own vision 2020 of what you're going to achieve this year. Do you have any resolutions that you set for yourself? But I've also heard that because of what is going on right now with Corona and people being on lockdown, not being able to work, if you work for yourself in an industry where you can't continue to work, people are thinking about actually just, writing off the year. Like, consider that everything that you hope to achieve is not going to be achieved. So I'm gonna first ask the question to all of you guys, and I believe the moderator is going to put a poll on your screen in a few seconds. But the question is this: in terms of what you plan for 2020, have you written it off? Do you think it cannot be achieved anymore? Have you given up on it? And are you just simply looking off to 2021? Personal life, business life, love life, any other way that you're thinking? I think the poll is on your screen. Just submit your answer, and we would go on with the rest of the presentation. There are about 63 of us in the presentation. Anani, I don't know whether you can see the results as they come in, but when you've seen enough results and you're okay with it, maybe you can end it without sharing the results.
All right, that's fine.
Okay.
I can see the results as it comes in.
Okay. Are you comfortable with the number that you've gotten?
Not yet.
Okay.
Let's give it 20 more seconds.
Okay. If you're just joining and the poll is in your screen, I'm asking whether you've given up. Desmond.
So 10 seconds more to go, and
okay.
We have 45 out of 65.
Okay, I think Desmond is trying to answer in the chat, but that's not what we're asking you to respond on the poll. Okay, all right.
Okay,
I think we can call it. All right. So now, as I mentioned earlier on, I'm going to tell a story, right? And I'm going to tell it from the early 2000s and what digital promised us. I left Ghana in early 2000, and I was in the UK. I did college there, and then I did university there. And in all of that time, what they would teach you at school, what they would tell you about what the internet is doing, what all these digital services, what it's going to do for the future. And it's practically 20 years now, right? So I'm gonna first look at what was promised in the early 2000s, And then I'm actually going to pretend that 2020 has not happened yet. I will pretend that we're still in maybe middle of 2019. And I will tell a story up until the middle of 2019, right? Where we stood with regard to all of these promises. And then I will move into the final part where we will talk about what 2020, even with the few months that we're into it, has been teaching us with regards to these same promises. Okay? Right. Now, how do we usually imagine the future? If you look at how we think about the future, there are lots of ways that generally in our storytelling, when we imagine the future, we look at the future in three broad ways. There's the one where we're very, very optimistic. We think that everything is going to be flying cars and Jetsons and living in buildings that are floating in the sky, and robots look after us, and we're not sick anymore, we are bionic, all of those things, and everything is peachy, right? That is one way we think of the future, right? I'm sure you guys all know the Jetsons. Then there's the middle ground, right? Where we think of the future that there's technology and it's helping us to do so many different things. Sometimes it's helping us to predict what is going to happen in the future and stop crime, and everybody's living happily for the most part. But then there's a dark side to it. If you know what this image that is on my screen is, the middle one, it's who knows what this is from? Can I get an answer from someone? Just one person. First person. Anyone there?
I think it's about artificial intelligence.
Mission Impossible.
It is not Mission Impossible.
Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
No. It's a Tom Cruise movie, right? Where he can see into the future.
The future, yeah, the twin stuff.
Sorry?
Some twin movie of a sort where
exactly. Where they could tell the future.
One of them was giving some partial info.
Exactly, right. So this movie, in this movie, we can see how technology is helping us, and you put your hand there and then everything's on the screen and it's beautiful, like they're beautifully made. But then there's something that is very sinister at the end of it. So this is where we think that it's not all rosy, right? It's like, yes, technology is there and it's a future that's very nice, but then there's also some negative aspects of it, right? Then there's the last way that we think about the future, right? Which is on the other extreme, where we think that we basically just kill ourselves or we destroy the earth in future. Sometimes with technology, sometimes with just everyday life, right? So you've got these two extremes of like very, very pretty things, and you've got the extreme of death in between, and you've got also the part where there is in between, and we've got all those gray areas in between. So we don't think of the future as static, right? A lot of time we think of the future as being driven somehow with technology, with us, right? Now, the reality, right? When you think about, I don't know if anybody's ever seen this meme before. It's a picture of a very young Bill Gates, 1989, looking very naive, talking about, well, what people consider to be naive, in the sense that he's talking about all the things that we will do with PCs 30 years from now, right? And then below that picture, they put something really stupid or something really silly that we are doing with computers now, right? It's a very cynical take on how we're using computers in the future, right? Because it doesn't tell the full story. For every single person that is using the PC that they have in their hand, their phone, to do a video of Ujo Biga and right? And that's all they do if they ever use the computer for anything, to just make fun jokes, right? There's probably somebody that's doing something positive, right? And then you see the other one where all these computers are, the one in the middle here, where all these computers are somehow in a landfill, destroying the environment, right? And that is a very, very cynical take. Now, I have never seen any of these memes, right, which looks at it and talks about a positive thing that we are doing with computers, right? And so for me, I think some of these jokes that we tell, it doesn't give us enough, it doesn't give enough credence to some of the positive things that we're doing or we've done with technology in that 30 years. By the time I finish telling the story, you probably kind of know where I stand in it, that I'm not that very cynical about it, but I also kind of know that there are some limitations to what technology is doing for us, or how fast it's moving versus how we think it's going to be moving. Right? So earlier on, we talked about how we usually imagine the future. And you saw all of these different extremes, right? But the reality sometimes is very different, right? So I'm going to go through a few things, right? I'm going to show you a few things that we imagined in the past of what the future would be like and how it actually turned out currently. Okay. So this is somebody's rendition of what they thought a mobile phone would be like, right? Years ago, right? So before we had smartphones, they thought, yes, you're going to have a phone and you're going to press it and they would make calls, but it's just going to look largely very mechanical, right? And it's going to have maybe a voice control or something like that. So we're not always like far off, right? But the reality is that a phone in the future is more of like an Android phone, right? Which, when I show you the features of an Android phone on paper, right, it's very nice and pretty, and it can do this, and you can just talk to Siri and it will respond to you, and I can talk to Google and it will find this for me. But the reality is that when you look out there, right, the average person has a phone that probably looks like this. An Android phone with the same icons, and the screen is cracked. They barely use it for anything smart. They just use it for calls, they do some chats, right? And not what somebody from the previous slide that I showed you, the cynical person would say is very useful, right? But this is the reality, right? It's not a phone that is a glass that you flick a finger and it appears as a hologram in front of you. This is the reality that we have in, at least as of 2019. Okay, I'm going to show you another example. Who remembers this image? There's another one from the Jetsons. If you can see, this is them showing George Jetson doing a video call from his office, which he does very often to his family when they are home. And so this is how we imagined, even as early as the mid 80s or late 80s, early 90s, that video calling was going to be like, right? Now, the reality is a little bit different. You would say that it's better than what we imagined, in the sense that you're not doing it with a huge screen with a tikopo, right? You have a small phone in your hands. You can make a call with one person. We're using one of them. We're doing a video call with most people are using a phone, or if they're using a laptop, it's a very small laptop. And it's almost nothing like what it was imagined, except it's doing exactly what was imagined. So sometimes, obviously, it's much better than we even imagined, right, so to speak. Then the last one. I need a volunteer who can tell me what this screen, what this image is from, where it's from.
Charlie, we just don't know the movie name.
You don't know the movie name. Who's the one in the back? Who's the one in the back? Who's the guy in the back?
It's Arnold.
Arnold. The movie is called Total Recall, right? Yeah. This is a movie which is very, very much futuristic, right? It's from the late 80s or early 90s, and it's looking at how the future is going to be. And this is this scene where Arnold gets into a car, right? And the car is being driven by a robot, right? And he's trying to get a robot to take him somewhere, and it's just a very confusing and annoying thing for him. If I remember correctly, he ends up ripping the robot from the car and trying to drive it himself. And so, if this is how we imagine that the future would be for getting from A to B with taxis, right? The reality is a little bit more different, right? If I pick the average person in Ghana, they are not anywhere close to a self-driving car with a robot controlling it. And even when there's a robot controlling the car, it's not a physical robot sitting in it. If you're taking an Uber, for instance, you still have a human being sitting in the front. I would admit that most of the time they're probably just as annoying as the robots that Arnold had to deal with. But this is the reality that we have, right? It hasn't panned out, certainly not everywhere. Maybe if you live in somewhere in Korea or somewhere very specific in Japan, you might have some self-driving cars taking you everywhere. But this is our reality, right? So the future doesn't always pan out to be what we think it's going to be. Certainly not as positive. A lot of time it's much better than we expected it would be. Okay. All right. Now, I'm gonna take the next few slides and I'm gonna talk about some of the early 2000s promises of the internet going digital, right? And as I experienced from my economics teachers, from my computing teachers in the early 2000s, right? Okay, so that we can be sure about where this conversation is centered, right? I want to define what going digital means, at least for the purposes of the presentation that I'm going to be making from this point onward, right? So that it's not just me saying going digital and then nobody understands what I mean by it. So for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to define going digital as actively and intentionally using or providing a digital way of doing personal or business related activities over an analog way of doing it, right? And this could be a manual way of doing it. And you can see I've highlighted a few of these words on there. Actively and intentionally, because you have to continue doing it, right? You have to continue doing whatever it is whatever digital activity that you're doing for it to be said that you're going digital. So if you did it once and then you reverted to the manual way of doing it, you haven't gone digital, right? Intentionally, because for the purposes of this presentation, I want to define it as something that you choose to do. So the example that I will give is this. Let's say that you have a bank, right? And for you, all you want to do is write checks in, right? You want to pay, you want to take money out by check. That's all you want to do. That's the only way that you want to pay money into your account. And your bank decides that they don't accept checks anymore. And so you're forced to now use their ATM, or you're forced to go on your online banking. You have not gone digital. The bank has gone digital by providing you with a means of doing it, right? You have been forced to go digital. So for the purpose of this conversation, forced to go digital is not relevant. I'm talking purely about people that have gone digital of their own, right? Or maybe it was initially forced on them, but then eventually they decided to just continue doing it. Instead of going to put the money back in their mattress, they decided, you know what, fine, I'm going to continue actively using it. Then you would say that they've gone digital. Choosing an option as selected, because there has to be an option. If it's the only option and you're using it, you probably wouldn't be able to say that you've gone digital, right? So if Ghana, the passport service, application service says that we won't allow you to make payment by cash anymore, and you're forced to go to the bank, right? At least for the payment part, they've gone digital. But you necessarily haven't gone digital. If they have gone digital for the payment part and for the application part, you still have to fill a form, even if you're downloading it online, and submit it physically. Then they haven't gone digital, right? So let's be very clear about what going digital here means. It has to be intentional, and it has to be continuously done, and there has to be an option to not go digital. Okay. So for the next slide, I'm going to pick a few of these promises, right? And that were made, and I will kind of look at up until at least 2019, what did it look like? You know, some of the things that were mentioned was around communication. We were told how it's going to change communication. You'll be able to talk to, and this is early 2000s. So if I talk about how I went online, I think my first time touching a computer was in Accra Academy, in the computer room. It's a very small room. It was not connected to the internet most of the time. And I remember going on the computer and seeing a WinZip icon. And I was like, what is this? It looks so pretty to me. This like a clamp with something in the middle. And I was wondering what it was. And all the guy that was instructing told me was, don't touch that, right? And we were certainly not online. There was a Netscape browser on it, but you were certainly not allowed to use it. You weren't going to go online at all. And I remember I and Charles Sando would run away from school, and then we went to this internet cafe by the roadside, and we said we wanted to create an email address, right? So we go and we say we want to create an email address, and the person that is manning the internet cafe says, okay, this is a form. They give us a paper form, and they tell us to write all our details on it. So we're going to sign up for an email, which is a digital service, and he's asking us to fill some things on a paper form. And then you fill the paper form, then he takes it and he goes onto the computer and he creates the account for you, types everything for you, right? If you can imagine that's such a process in 1997 or 1998, right? It wasn't a very common thing to have an email address. And certainly I didn't know what I was doing because I created an email address and I don't think I ever used it for anything. It was just to have one, right? Now, the story about email, right? If you're looking at the slide that I'm sharing, is that currently there are 4 billion people, right? Out of the 7 billion with email addresses. And that constitutes about a 1,000% increase worldwide, okay? So if we're going to tell the story about communication, did the promise of how the internet and digital services were going to transform communication, has it panned out? I would say that even though it's only 4 billion people out of 7 billion people that have email, right? It is a fairly good number. Now this number, we live in a world where almost everything can be challenged. You can say that these 4 billion email addresses don't belong to single individuals, right? The statistics show that each person has 1.3 email addresses, right? So certainly it's not that there are 4 billion people that have email addresses. There are 4 billion email addresses in the world. That is still impressive by any standards, right? So I would say that for a worldwide transformation of communication, email has worked by growing 1,000% between 2000 and 2019. For Ghana, the statistics is showing that about 10 million email addresses exist, which is tied very closely with the number of Ghanaians that are actually online, right? And that constitutes about a 40,000% increase. If you look at that number, 40,000%. Now, if you and I know anything about percentages, if you are going from a very small number, then it's very easy to jump up in percentages, right? So worldwide, while it's 1,000%, if you look in Europe, for instance, it might not be as high as 1,000%. If you look in Ghana, you're looking at 40,000%. If you look in other countries, it's even higher than that as a percentage increase. And I would say that it's largely transformed communication for some demographic, right? So not everybody. So if I pick the average person that is on this platform, I would say email has transformed things for you. But if I step outside of this Zoom call and I pick the average Ghanaian, they still do not use email, right? And that is the truth. So here you can see that the transformation that is promised is not spread evenly everywhere. There are some places that it would spread better. I didn't want to bore you too much data, but in Europe, the numbers are different, right? I can do the same thing. I'll pick another service. Let me pick social media, right? So here we're looking at social media, and I'm talking Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram. These are the ones, right? And while I couldn't find specifically any data, right, that's kind of largely splits between using the internet and using social media, what I found suggests that 97% of internet users use social media. So effectively goes like this. If you are online, you're on social media, at least one of them, wherever you are in the world. It doesn't matter whether it's Ghana or anywhere else. So the difference really now becomes, what is the penetration of using the internet in any of these demographics? So worldwide, we're talking about around 58%, right? People that are on social media, versus say Europe and North America, which is around 90%, right? So if I pick 100 people in the US, 90 of them would be on at least one social media platform. The same thing if I pick Ghana, right? If I pick 100 people, I'll find somewhere around 37% to 40% that are using social media. Again, these are numbers that you can challenge in any way that you want, right? But the point I'm trying to make here is that in some parts of the world, there's a higher penetration of using social media than others. Even in our part of the world, if you look at Africa, Nigeria's numbers are different from Kenya's numbers, but they're certainly higher than Ghana. And you pick the same thing, if you know many Nigerians, you probably kind of find that a lot more Nigerians that you know, assuming that you don't know them only off the internet, are also more likely to be on social media. Okay? And for the average Ghanaian as well, the same thing. If it's 37% of Ghanaians that are online, then I can say that for the average Ghanaian, they are not at all on social media. Right? So you see this thing across, you see the same story across. Now, I could spend all this time and I could bore you with a lot of details by picking every single communication platform or channel that we use, right? And it will be the same story. So I'm not going to bore you with that, right? But essentially what we can get from this series of slides is that there is a huge transformation in communication over the last 19 years, between 2009 and 2019, but it's not spread evenly everywhere. Okay, I'm going to pick telecommuting. Telecommuting was one of the stories that we were told, you're going to be able to work from home, you can have a whole business, you're going to do everything from home, you don't have to go to the office, offices will be shut down, buildings will be used for other things. And well, the story didn't quite pan out the same way. I'm first going to look at worldwide, right? So globally, right, 51% on the surveys that I found, right, 51% of companies have a clause, right, in their manuals, like the employee manuals, that say that they support some sort of telecommuting, i.e., you can work from home. We support it when you can work from home. Now, you see that I put an asterisk on that 51%, because when you actually dig deeper in this same service, you find out that it's only in principle, but that in reality, 71% or so of these companies that claim that they allow you to work from home expect you to be in the office, right? And I can certainly say the same thing for many of these multinationals that I've worked for. It's a lot of the time, it's really just as part of the policy that if something were to go wrong, it's something were to go wrong, for business continuity reasons, you're allowed to work from home. But the reality is totally different. And this is the global, and a lot of time when they talk about global reports, they're just involving 1 or 2 countries in Africa. They might hit Nigeria, South Africa, and Ghana, and interview about 1,000 people. But then they will run the surveys on Google Docs. And by extension, if you run a survey on Google Docs, it means that you're picking people that are online. So you've kind of skewed the results in a way. So it might not hold true for places like Ghana, just like we saw in the previous slide, that it doesn't hold true necessarily for everywhere else, right? Now, if you pick the US, right, there are 4 million, right, as of 2015, that were working from home. That's the best statistics that I could find. And that is accounting for about 3% of the workforce. So if US, with the infrastructure, which we consider to be much better than most other places, is doing 3% of the workforce working from home, then we could say that largely on a global scale, telecommuting's promise didn't pan out. It didn't pan out at all. And you can do the same thing for the UK, where it's a little bit higher at 7.5%. But then you have to kind of understand that some of the way that the UK government counts telework, they don't call it telecommuting. Telework is if somebody is working from home and they use a phone, a telephone, or a computer. So if I'm working in telesales, right, and all I'm working from is a phone sitting at home, then I'll be part of this 7.5%. But still, 7.5% is still very low, and it's still for the same year. So we can say that for the telecommuting, the promise of digital transformation didn't largely pan out, at least worldwide. Now, I'm going to try and talk about Ghana now. When I started looking into it, I didn't find a lot. I found a handful of blog posts talking about this, and just out of these handful, most of them were actually written in 2020 as a result of what is going on now. So it's not something that we capture a lot of data on. And certainly there's no official data on it that I could find. But if I'm going to go purely on anecdotal evidence, right? From my experience, I have worked in 2 large multinationals in Ghana, and I'm working for a 3rd one now. So out of these 3 multinationals, I would say that before 2020, working from home was not something that was actively part of the plan. It was written into the terms and conditions that yes, you can work from home, and it's largely kind of designed. For instance, like if you're a mother and you've just had a baby, if you are sick and you need to work from home, then somehow there was an arrangement for you to be able to work from home. If you worked in IT and you needed to be on call so that they could, you needed a VPN to connect to the network, then there was a policy covering that, and also for to cover things like business continuity. But if you got up and say, hey, boss, next month, I would like to work from home, they will tell you to piss off, right? The reality was not that. So I think it's largely, we could say that for Ghana, it's been the same. And this is me talking about multinationals. I'm gonna ask, maybe 1 or 2 comments here. Did anybody work for any company who somehow ingrained working from home telecommuting as part of their process? It's a standard. Do we have anyone on here that has that experience?
Yeah, hello. Hello?
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, we call it agile working.
Okay. So what I'm asking is, like, did you have an experience? Have you had a lot of experience where you could essentially work from home all the time, and your bosses will not worry about whether you are working you're working properly, or whether you're skiving off and just going to rest at home?
Faf. Fred.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Wouldn't that also depend on the kind of work? Yeah. Because
yes,
there are some people whose job is such that you don't need supervision to get it done. Mm-hmm. So that will also depend on the level of the job and what the person really does.
So, I mean, for the purposes of this conversation, let's assume that this is a job that can be done from home, right? What I'm saying is that in my experience, it was never the case that it was, in principle, it was there in the terms and conditions, but the reality is that you actually are expected to be in the office. And when you do say that you want to work from the office, it was not something that was allowed. I've had a few instances where I've said I'm working from home because I've been really busy, but I kind of understood instinctively that it was something that I could use sparingly, like, maybe every quarter or something like that, say, okay, I want to work from home and finish this project that is like
Fred.
I'm blocked on.
Yeah, Fred.
I just wanted to comment about that. So, like in my particular case, it depends on. I mean, you have objectives, and then you work for a client, and if you are able to work from home and still meet those objectives, and the client is happy, then nobody really bothers you. It's only when issues come, but even nobody talks about you didn't come to the office or anything like that. I also work for a multinational, and even before COVID-19, it has never been an issue if you would like to work from home or go to the office or stuff like that. And
that's awesome.
Sometimes, if you really want to work from home, your boss even encourages you. If you think you can, why not?
That's awesome. Do you mind dropping me a line of the company you work from? I might want to come and hit you up later.
Okay.
Anyway, yes. Go ahead.
I also work for a multinational. Essentially, it is documented, and you are encouraged to do that. Right. However, the implementation of it sort of brings some uneasiness, sometimes from comments from your bosses. What the comments they make about you, sort of always looking at to whether you are abusing that type of working from home, and so really it's there, but you are not always like want to do it because of questions that may come up.
All right, thank you very much. So I think those two comments, I like that they were different, and so it was good to see that there are some companies that were making use of this telecommuting, even here in Ghana, right? Whereas you have another one which is very similar to the experience that was described earlier on in the global scale. That's, it's there in principle, but when you start using it, then you start getting some funny looks. Now, well, if you talk about average Ghanaian, let's say, just forget it, right? The average Ghanaian business would not want you to work from home. It's even if they wanted you to work from home, it just wouldn't work. So the average Ghanaian, the chances of there being a transformation in their jobs because of the ability to work from home is not there. There are some handful of people that maybe they're working on project themselves, like the web developer, they sit at home, right, in the work. That is not the same as telecommuting. Working from home as a primary way of working versus telecommuting is totally different things. If there's an office and you have a choice of working from home, that's different. If you are working for yourself and the only way that you can actually do the work is because you have to sit in your room on the table and go and list items on Instagram for sale. I don't think I would call it as a huge transformation. And obviously, it's part of the number of people that are working online somehow, but it's not the same as telecommuting. And the average person in Ghana certainly does not fall within this spot. So I think when it comes to telecommuting, I would say that it's largely a failure worldwide and specifically for Ghana as well, and for the average Ghanaian as well, that it didn't pan out. Okay. So we have an example of something that was promised by the digital revolution that has worked really well, and something that has not panned out as well. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time kind of going through all of these different promises, right, and talk about them. But these are some of them. These are the promises there: e-commerce, telemedicine, transforming governance, financial services, e-learning. All of these things were talked about, right? E-commerce. At the time, Amazon was just a blip and it was mostly failing. eBay was probably bigger than Amazon at the time. But now, as of 2019, we know that e-commerce is huge, at least worldwide. Maybe not so much in Ghana, right, or Africa. But Amazon is a behemoth, the largest country, the largest, one of the largest companies in the world right now. Alibaba, we almost all heard about it. eBay is still huge. Tonaton and Jumia in Ghana specifically, not as big. But we would say that following the same discussion, e-commerce has worked largely worldwide for some demographics, and then for smaller demographics, smaller parts of society in different places. Whereas in some places it's not working at all. Telemedicine. We were told that robots would be available and doctors would use the robots to do surgery. You know, your doctor doesn't need to be there. You can be in the US and you could be doing an operation in Japan, right? Because you're an expert. No chance of that, whether it's worldwide or whether it's in Ghana, right? I don't think that is being successful at all, right? Transforming governance. We were told about e-voting, you know, we were told about how democracy was going to be much better because the people will have a lot more knowledge and so they'll be able to make better decisions. The reality is that when e-voting is implemented in many places, that doesn't work out well, or it seems not to be working out well because people kind of afraid that it will be used to cheat, right? I don't know how that is different from, say, somebody stealing ballot boxes, right? But it's largely been unsuccessful. Yes, it's been really great in making sure that people can get a lot of information. But that same information reach has now been used to beat us on the head with either giving us too much information so that we cannot make decisions, or being used to push fake news and polarizing us. So I would say it's largely unsuccessful, even though it's been successful in some parts, right? Financial services, largely successful. But obviously in specific demographics. Internet banking is huge in almost everywhere in the world now. Obviously, you have to have a bank account first to be able to use internet banking. Mobile money is big in Africa mostly, not so much in Europe and some of North America and most of Asia, right? So this is one of those instances where we are better off in being able to use mobile money than in other places, right? But obviously that's down to us not having jumped on internet banking and ATMs and those things much earlier. So I would say largely successful financial services, right? E-learning, would say mixed success, right? Even in the UK, yes, there were times where in the early 2000s where you could submit your work, right, online. Universities were allowed you to do that. Maybe it's kind of limited to international study in most other jurisdictions rather than if you're not in Europe. So if you're in Ghana, for instance, the standard will probably not be you to submit something digitally. Certainly not all universities will do it. And even they do, sometimes they expect you to then submit physically. I remember in my university days, you submit it digitally, then you have to physically submit it on a piece of paper. I don't know why that was being done, but certainly that was what was being done. So even as of 2019, we'd say it was a mixed success where maybe at the tertiary level it was being used heavily, but it didn't filter all the way down. And certainly the average Ghanaian would not be thinking about e-learning in any way at all, okay? So this is a bunch of these promises and essentially where we were at, right, in 2019. I want to dig a little bit deeper into Ghana, right, specifically. I'm a bit conscious of time, so I'm going to speed up on this one. Now, here I'm going to talk about USSD and how mobile money has grown in Ghana. So we need to start thinking that digital is not always the internet, at least not when it comes to the interface that the end user is using to grow, right? Now, USSD is what was used to grow mobile money and still largely grows it. Obviously, there's a lot of behind the scenes work. So don't be fooled, right? The success of mobile money is not just USSD. Behind the scenes, I remember working in mobile money at Tigo Cash in 2013. We tried to at first push P2P for somebody to send money to someone, right? And you would go to Makola, right? We would actually go there and trying to sell this idea to the market woman. And they'll tell you like, but why would I want to send the money from my phone to somebody's phone? Why can't I just give the money to them, right? So it wasn't something that was easily sold. You're trying to get them to start saving on their mobile money. They tell you that, yes, but I have this guy and he's been taking my susu for 10 years. Then you tell him a story about how somebody's Susu money was stolen by the Susu collector after 15 years. He says, yeah, but this guy, I've known him for 10 years. So it's okay. He won't steal my money. So we have to spend a lot of time. And you can see when you look at these slides that if you look at 2013, for instance, the active mobile money customers, right, was 991. Now, a lot of it was fake because we were essentially trying to kind of put money on people's accounts to get them to engage, right? But this is one of the ways that we're doing it. Now, behind the scenes, we decided that it was better to also get business involved, banks involved. So we did all these APIs behind the scenes, which allows banks to talk to the platforms, to move money from a bank into the platform. So we kind of decided that even though USSD was the main way that the average consumer was interacting with it, behind the scenes, we're still using the internet and the APIs for businesses to move money into it. So yes, USSD is driving the front end of it, but the back end is also supported by the internet digitally, right? In the same way for ATMs. If you look at this slide, you can see the story being told where essentially in 2019, we have 12 million active users on mobile money. It's a success story by any standard. And if you consider that these are people that ordinarily would not have had bank accounts, and so they would have been cash only, then I would say that there are other channels to go in digital. I will give a personal experience of that one of the reasons why digital is not only the internet. It can be as simple as picking up a phone, right, and calling somebody that sells timber, right, in the timber market. And then next time you need them to deliver timber, you're not getting in a car and going there. You're calling them and saying, deliver this timber to me. They say, okay, send me the money. So before you had to go there physically and send them the money. But you're going digital by simply just picking up your phone and directing them to bring the item to you, and then you pay them digitally. So it kind of a mix of both, right? So we need to kind of understand that digital is not only internet. I'm going to use another industry that I've had an experience in. This is microloans, where company like Fido Money Lending, where you can apply for a loan from an app, right? So end to end, you don't need to, Fido doesn't need to see you at all, right? I remember joining Fido early in 2016, and we're doing something like 700 or so transactions, loan applications a month. So in a whole month, we'll get 700 applications, and 70 or to 80% of them have to physically come to the branch and apply for the loan using a tablet that we'll give to them. So we were kind of like 1 foot digital, but the person still had to physically be there. We did a whole bunch of different transformations. And by the time that I was leaving Fido, at the end of 2019, we were doing something like 150,000 loan applications a month, right? And 1% or so of them needed to be physically present in a branch. So all of it was being done with people downloading the app, applying. Everything was being done. KYC was being done. We didn't need to see them physically to give them a loan. Granted, it's a very small amount. You can see the same thing with MTN's mobile money. The difference, obviously, is that you need a financial history on mobile money. But this is to the point where we're talking about 300 million US dollars disbursed, right, as of 2019, right? 2 million customers have been served between companies like Fido and Quick Loan on MTN, right? So this is one of those places where we can say this has been largely successful, very, very similar to what we saw in the financial services. I'm going to pick last industry, e-commerce. Now, if you look at just you and I, you would say e-commerce is big. It's not, but e-commerce is not big at all. Earlier on, I talked to you about the 37% that are online, right? That 37% is still yet to jump into e-commerce. People kind of are very uncomfortable with e-commerce in the official sense. So in the same way that they are wary about going on e-commerce and paying money for Jumia or Tonaton to have an item delivered to them, they are kind of happy relatively to buying something in a WhatsApp group. I don't know how many times I've seen people posting on WhatsApp, I have a car to sell, and then they list all the details of the car.
Fred, you fuck. Shut the fuck up, Fred. Fred, your connection. Oh, Fred, your connection shit, mate. So you're
Fred Kalia
out. Fred.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. Yo.
Yes, I am monitoring that, so go ahead.
Okay, all right. Guys, you can join in. You can give us your feedback.
It's fine. Let's
okay.
Go.
All right. So here, what is that called again? Zoom bombing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is where the average person, 2% of Ghanaians are officially using e-commerce. But yes, we know that you and I actively use WhatsApp as a space that we use for buying and selling things, right? We have people that are actively buying and selling on Instagram. You know, I know people that have a whole shop, right? They go and buy items from Kant and then come and list it on Instagram, and they can sell it very, very quickly. Now, even if you add all of these unofficial channels to it, I'm sure that we will not even breach the 10% or even 5%. So we can still say that e-commerce is still in its infancy. So it looks like I have, in my last few years of working in Ghana, I've jumped from industry to industry that is like, at the beginning when I jump in, it's very, very small. And then the aim is that to grow it to a certain point. And then it looks like I get bored and I jump out and I go and find the next big thing, the next small thing to grow. I don't know how long I'm going to last in e-commerce, but I hope that by the time I'm leaving e-commerce, it's just as effective as maybe how mobile money and microlending has been since I jumped in. So this is the story so far up to 2019, from worldwide to Ghana to the average person. So I'm going to get to this. So I'm going to go to this slide now, and I want us to take a little bit of an interactive break, right, where we discuss what do we think went wrong for the things that have haven't gone well, and what do you think that went well for those things that have thrived, even if it's in those small demographics that we are talking about. Yao, how do you like to moderate this?
All right. So the best approach will be to raise your hand. So if you click on the participant icon in front of you, there is somewhere you can actually raise your hand. I'm sure somebody knows how to do that.
Or you can just type your question.
Or type your comment, and then we'll read it out.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, when you must out, just mention the person's name. But I think for now you can type. If somebody has something that they want to share immediately, maybe you can.
You can unmute your mic and then speak if you have something to share immediately.
Yeah. Hello. Good evening.
Okay. Good evening.
So my name is Eric. Yeah. Good. I just want to find out, I don't know, I joined a little bit late, so perhaps you might have addressed that. How do we, sort of monitor or guard against, the online risks, associated with e-commerce? And that, for me, that's been, because we've had and heard many instances where there are, people trying to peddle fraud and stuff, which actually deters many people from patronizing e-commerce. So what can we do as end users to guard against these fraud?
Online fraud. Okay, thank you, Eric. We'll take one from Morrison. Iman Oankem. Your hand is up.
Yes, it's actually Emmanuel Oswankama.
Okay.
I would like to touch on the why telemedicine couldn't work. Health is a very important thing, and the kind of data and speed of internet connectivity across the world, not just in Africa, has been a big concern, because the issue is, assuming you are dealing with a surgery with a robot, okay, with a surgeon in Japan, for instance, and you are in Africa. If there is a connectivity break and the person is open up, who is going to continue the surgery? So the data infrastructure made it very difficult for people to trust such process. I believe also that initially we envisaged a lot of AI development in the area of medicine, said that telemedicine could be possible. And I believe that development hasn't gone as fast as we could anticipate it to be. Data has also been very expensive. So I believe for such procedures, it was going to be very expensive to have high-speed internet connectivity throughout. And it was going to be more expensive than bringing down a surgeon from maybe Japan to come and carry it out. So in my opinion, I think this was one of the reasons what went wrong with the telemedicine side of the equation. For the e-commerce, I believe that what went wrong for our space was the fact that we didn't get, our addressing system wasn't so good for deliveries to be until quite recently we had this GPS, because even the Ghana Post GPS, I mean, even for the Google Maps, it was very difficult for you to get the right calibration. Sometimes it could give you 16 meters away, and with our poor road networks, you will end up in someone's backyard and get stuck. So all these things affected the development. This is my opinion, and I believe the experts would point me in the right direction so that I could adjust my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. Let's take Nana Morrison, and then we'll come to Richardson. Then Fred, you can respond. Please make it snappy. Thank you. Nana Morrison. Nana Morrison, you may need to unmute your mic to be able to contribute.
Sorry. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Good evening.
All right. I think the first person also asked that question. My main concern is the data security. You know, security is one of the main issues that people are scared to kind of do their business online. You know? And like Bob said in the beginning, data is not only necessary online. It doesn't do everything online, but security is my main point, especially when it comes to money transfer. You know, because I'm on this side. If I try to transfer money back home, and the system that I'm using, I'm not kind of sure about it. You know, and I don't have much more information. I'm scared to even send my bank account. I mean through that system. So my main concern is security.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, all right, appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, Nana Morrison. Now let's hear you, Richardson, and then Faf can respond.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Faf, that was a great presentation. I think I joined late, so a quick one. Do you think Ghana is ready for a new subscription portal? I mean, they have abroad, New York Times, Guardian, and all of that. Do you think Ghana is ready for a new subscription? I mean, judging from the likes of My Joy Online, Ghana Web, I mean, all the other ones, do you think we are ready to pay for news?
Okay, thank you, Richardson. So I noticed that some of them were questions, but really what you wanted was people's opinion on what has gone right and what did not go right. Nonetheless, over to you.
Yes, that's what I wanted. I'm actually going to park anything that was more of like a question that it doesn't really relate to the presentation at hand. So unfortunately, I will not respond to the subscription portal for news. Maybe we can have a separate discussion later on that. Now, okay, so I did get some input on why people think things worked out. Actually, wait, okay. So what has actually happened here seems to be that people only talked about what went wrong or what are the blockers, right, to going digital, okay? Which is incidentally a huge part of what this presentation is about. right, that the mindset, right, seems to be, why can't I go digital? What is the blocker in front of me, right? That would prevent me from going digital. Okay, so instead of, I mean, I'm gonna pick at each one of these things that were mentioned, where it seems that we were talking about the blockers or the reasons why we couldn't go, right? Now, overarching all of that, I'm gonna say this. What we've seen where there's been a transformation is that the transformation is not universal, right? You don't need to take everyone along with you, right? You can get the benefit by going or being part of those ones that go. You can be part of the transformation, right? Now, we can spend hours debating, right? What is wrong on what are the blockers and all of that, right? And for each one that you give, I can give you a reason why you should probably ignore that, right? And find a safer way to do it, or how for each one of those ones that you are worried about, when it comes to the analog way of doing it, right? There's just an equal risk there. So let's do this, all right? So let's talk about financial fraud, right? The question was, how do we guard against it? Because I'm a bit uncomfortable with moving into digital, right, with my money, because somebody might steal my money. So if I could just explain one of the simplest scams, right, that I've seen with mobile money in my years at Tigo Cash. It went like this. A guy creates a Facebook account and befriends a woman. He claims that he's in the US. Usually it's the US. He claims that he's in love with her, right? And usually they pick a woman with a boyfriend or a married woman. Then they shower praises on them, lots of lip service. So they will send you airtime, all of those things. I'll ask my friend to send you airtime, those sort of things. Then within a few weeks, they say, you know what, I want to marry you. I want to send you something. So they will send you, they will send you a picture of a package that they've sent to you from the US. And the funny thing is that all these cameras had the same picture. So in the picture, you have a laptop, you have an iPhone, you have $1,000, and yes. So this is the same story that's usually told. Now, when they tell you that they've sent this package, right? Remember that in all of this time, this woman has a boyfriend or a husband, and they are engaging this guy, right? So eventually they tell you they send this package to you, and sometimes in the beginning they go in there thinking that they're going to scam the guy, right? I have a boyfriend, I'm just going to talk to him, I'm going to take his money. Then they get a call that, hey, your package has arrived, okay? So they then tell you that, okay, the package has arrived, but the person didn't pay all the fees on it. So they needed to send 300 cedis to cover the shipment because you left it out, okay? Now, what they first do is they say, no, I'm not going to pay. Then they go and chat with the guy and say, oh, they said that I didn't pay all of you. Said, oh, I forgot. I didn't realize that it was this much. I think I paid it by second class or something like that. So don't worry about it. Just pay the 300 and go and get a package. Remember, it's laptop, phone, some other things, like you have seen the picture of it, right? Now, they go and pay the 300 cedis, right? And they go and pay it by mobile money, okay? So they go to an agent and they go and transfer 300 cedis to somebody's wallet, okay? Then, because you paid the 300 cedis, they know they've got you. They tell you that it looks like there is a laptop in there and the person did not declare it. So because they didn't declare it, either we're going to send the package back or you have to pay customs this much. But I can do it for you very, very quickly if you hurry up and send the money to me. Otherwise, I have to send it back, right? So of course, then the person goes and then they go and transfer the money to them. Now, in all of this, right, it's very easy to blame mobile money and say mobile money is the channel enabling this scam. But I can tell you that you can run the same scam, right, by replacing mobile money and putting something in there. Mobile money did not bring scamming. There were scammers before. People always find different ways of scamming. So if you're going to look for excuses, right, or reasons why you shouldn't go digital, you would find them. For every single risk that you have with mobile money, you probably have a matching matching risk when you're using cash. People were scamming people for check, right? For checks before, right? They could make you transfer money into a bank account to make a payment for a goods that they've bought and have it delivered somewhere, and they would not involve more money at all. So the point I'm trying to make here is that for every single one of these, you can find something positive and something negative.
Okay.
We instinctively seem to kind of get stuck on the negatives about going digital, right? Telemedicine, right? Yes, medicine is sensitive, the infrastructure is bad, it doesn't, like we can give all the excuses in there, but we don't need to do 100% transformation, right? Currently, if you need to go and buy a house, for instance, right, and the house is 1 million, you're not going to use mobile money for it, right? So in the same way with medicine, it's not everything that we do with medicine, right, that needs to be done digitally. We can certainly pick and choose some elements of it, and we shouldn't drop the whole thing just because we can't do all of it. And almost for every single transformation that we've seen over time, it's iterative. It doesn't start fully formed. It starts come out somehow not very perfect. If you think about e-commerce and addressing systems, right? In spite of the issues that we've had with addressing systems, right? People before, right, were buying things, right, by sending a message from someone to go to Tamale and go and bring things for them to Accra. And when they go to Accra, they will give them instructions on how to follow the under the mango tree, you get here, you get here. And this is a message that will be passed to the person from Tamale to bring it here, right? Or when you get here, ask for this person. So we always have ways of working around the issues. So we shouldn't give those excuses only when it comes to going digital. We need to pick those parts where it works, right?
Okay, so we have 3 other people whose hands are up.
Okay.
They may have contributions on the same point, but we are also mindful of time. We want to hear them really briefly, and then we can proceed with your presentation. Is that okay?
Yes, sure.
All right. So I see Blinks E. Your hand is up. Please, you've been recognized. Please make your submission brief so that we can go straight to the point.
Okay. So this is Elonai. I was following what Mr. Frimpong, Fred was speaking about in terms of in terms of the mobile money fraud and others. And what we need to be very wary of is that most of those scams or those frauds are perpetrated most of the time with the help of the people who have been defrauded. For instance, we have social engineering attacks is one of the security attacks that we mostly have. And with that, they mostly get your buy-in. So you are the person, they use you to be able to defraud yourself. So with mobile money, especially for MTN mobile money, if the person doesn't have your PIN or something, he cannot be able to go ahead and defraud you. Unless they pass a way and means to be able to get your PIN, they cannot be able to do that. So that's one of them. So in those cases, there's should be a lot of education, because people should really understand. I think some of the mobile or the telcos have been doing all those advertisements and those educations that we should be ensure that we do not discuss our mobile money issues or mobile money wallet with other people. And I think it's something that should be sinking in now, and our people should be taking it very serious. And then also about telemedicine. We've heard a lot of buzzes about 5G, and if you should look into that in the telecommunication engineering space, there is something that we are trying to be able to divide those various bandwidths into specified technologies or specified speeds. So for instance, in telemedicine, in 5G, there is something known as ultra low latency communications. So with that, we are looking at services that are, we are looking at services that are very sensitive, like telemedicine and others, that people will be maybe somewhere in UK and be performing surgeries in maybe Ghana or any part of Africa without them traveling. So with that, we can be able to have very sharp speeds, and the network is going to be designed to be able to do that. And then we have something like enhanced mobile broadband, which we are still using, like what we are currently using, that will be having much better speeds and others. So with that, I think the future is still bright, and with that, we can be able to get most of those services with time going on and with better services. Yeah.
Thank you. Nana Kusi Serbo, you've been recognized.
Hello. Hi, good evening. I briefly want to talk about like what went wrong in a place like Ghana, for example. I see it that in Ghana, it basically has to do with politics, because I know people that have written proposals to state institutions to digitalize it. But because of some political issues, those things were not actualized. And then, in Ghana, if, let's take, for example, Registrars General, if we should go there today and say, we are making everything digitalized, most people will lose their jobs. I've lived in societies where all it takes is for you to just sit at home and you'll be able to open a bank account, open
Go ahead.
So it's fine, but that's my
okay. All right. Thank you, Nana Serbo.
Can we have maybe for what went well? Can we have one of them?
Black.
Yes, go ahead.
For what went well, I think.
Sorry, no, I mean for what went well. Like, can we have something on that?
Okay, so Kusi, let's check with Richard and see what he has to say. Richard Ablodope, please.
Yeah, good evening, and thanks for putting together this platform. What went right would be the coming into the space by the telecoms, driving, and I'm talking about e-commerce, bringing in the mobile money industry. I'm speaking from the banking side. And so the mobile money industry caused the banking sector to begin to rethink the ways of doing business. One of the main challenges I face is changing people's mindsets. So as you rightly said, we all have reasons why we are not using. And rather than having changing our mindset to say, I would go digital, I will put my challenges on 3 main lines. The first one is regulation, ID management. The second one is
Okay, this is
those
a
who are
bit
not talking,
annoying.
can
but
they mute their
Someone
mic?
can mute.
No, don't worry.
Saying that thing.
But who are those
It's
people?
hackers.
Who are those
Okay.
people, Ananiel?
Can I explain? Some people can just hack into the conversation because we share the link and it's not password protected and all of that. So I understand that, and I'm managing that from the back end. So please bear with us.
That's fine.
All right.
Okay.
So just to recap what I was saying that my challenge, or what I think could have been done a little bit better, is regulation on identification of people, and that would help deal with the fraud side of the e-commerce business. Number 2 is the e-commerce regulation from the central bank perspective, and number 3 is information sharing or education in the general space. So these 3 areas are areas that I think if the regulators for the various sectors had stepped in a little bit earlier, we would be far better off today. We have a great challenge with changing people's mindsets. My KPIs are on driving e-usage, and it's quite a challenging thing because everyone comes up with an excuse, as we have heard over and over. And that's a question I would like to throw to Fred. You are in the industry. What are your take, and how do you think we can change people's mindsets to be able to adapt and make the change for e-bank.
Thank you very much for that.
So Fred,
I think we should end this one now so I can continue with the
presentation.
Very few slides.
Okay. Don't worry. Fred, go on. Yes.
Okay, sorry. So let's continue. But maybe are you still letting people in?
No. Well, there is actually still space, so people can get in. Yeah.
Okay, but if we don't have to let any more people in, because I think if we have 65 people, if we don't need to let anybody else in, let's
okay.
All right. Because we don't need any more people. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So a lot of what we heard, right, when we asked what went wrong, what went well, were the excuses, right? A lot of the excuses that we were just talking about, right? And we will have a lot of time to discuss it. I think some of us might want to leave after 2 hours, but we can make this a longer discussion for those that want to stay and talk, right, after the presentation is done. But all of these excuses were this typical thing that you would hear, right? If you spoke with anybody in 2019, even as early as 2019, as early as December 2019, if you talk to people, you would hear all of these excuses. And then 2020 happened, okay? So 2020 happened and it walks in like a juggernaut. COVID-19 is
Okay. I think we lost Fred.
He's been hacked out. He's been pushed out.
Okay. Well, I've actually blocked everyone else from getting in, so that's
probably his data or something. Yeah.
Okay. So Fred, you're back. You will need to reshare. Fred, your mic is on mute, so you may need to.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay. Where did you lose me?
You were talking about in-game 2020.
2020, yes.
Okay. So 2020 walks in like a juggernaut, right? And a lot of the conversation that we were having regarding, oh, we can't do it because of this, we can't do it because of that, because of regulations, because of that, right? A lot of the excuses, when you think about it, right? If political will is not there to transform the passport office, right? It doesn't stop you yourself, right? It doesn't stop you yourself from downloading the PDF of the passport application and filling it digitally. It doesn't stop you from taking hold of your own life where you have a choice and going digital for it. Okay? So we can always offload the reason somewhere else, but always keep in mind that for every time that we are not moving into that space or going digital, there's a subset of people that are doing it. And if you're not, either you're a consumer in that space or you're a provider of a service in that space. It gives you excuses that you cannot do deliveries because of address limitations, right? It will not stop somebody else from saying, you know what, in spite of address limitations, I will work within the system that I'm given and build something, right? Like we now have a situation right now where payment services providers are regulated, but they were not regulated for so long. Now, when the regulation came into being, they didn't say, hey, you are doing a service without a license, and so we've shut you down and everybody needs to start afresh. If you now want to get into this space, you now have to start afresh. Whereas these guys were providing the service even while the regulation was not there, right? Because nobody actually told them that they shouldn't do it. A lot of times, that's how the reality is. Nobody's telling you to stop doing it. They're saying, hey, well, what you're doing is not regulated. If you look at how long that scam ran before Bank of Ghana stepped in, it gives you a fair idea of how far you can go with things before any regulator will try and stop you, right? Sometimes if you try and do something and the regulator it's already regulated, the regulator steps in immediately. If it's not regulated, nobody knows what to do about it. Then you have a dialogue with them. Then you start building something else, and then eventually the regulation comes into play, right? Now, this slide that you're seeing here is talking about Satya Nadella, is the CEO of Microsoft. He's talking about 2 years of digital transformation in 2 months. And for the most part, you know that when Microsoft is talking, it's probably talking about Europe and North America, and maybe some of the Asian countries. But if even for a company as big as Microsoft, they're seeing 2 years of transformation in 2 months because of Corona, right? We know that something magical is going on. Something magical is going on because suddenly the excuses stopped, right? Suddenly the excuses stopped. People were doing things overnight, right? People were changing things overnight. I'm gonna have the next slide, right? I'm gonna pick the same promises that we talked about from early 2000s up to 2019. And let's talk about some of the changes that have happened there, right? When people stop giving excuses, right? When people have to find a solution, they find it, right? Telecommuting. I'm currently working from home. My wife works from home. She sits next to me. We sit next to each other all day. My wife's car battery is dead because we haven't moved the car for so long, right? We are talking about companies that are now setting up policies, right, to permanently work from home because we're forced into the situation. They're now looking at long-term plans to telecommute, where they would rent smaller buildings and have maybe space for maybe a third of their workforce. And you have to actually, and you have to actively ask to come to the office before you come. So if you think about it, companies are transforming and saying it's working from home first. And if you want to come to the office, then you need to let me know so I can make sure that there's space for you. Now, even in this time, right, I will tell you that there will be somebody that is sitting somewhere, a CEO of a company somewhere that will say, no, my business is different. There's no way that we can work from home. No, but these guys, if you ask them to work from home, they will not do the work well, right? There will be people that will be giving excuses, but then there are also some that are working towards making the change. So it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is the mindset. And we don't need to move everybody. We don't need to move every service. We just need to move those that can be moved, right? You don't need to give up on your 2020. If you can find a way to move your service in a way that allows you to work within the constraints that we live in right now. Because obviously, if you're now going to look at how to build telecommuting into your business, the person that had it from 2015 is miles ahead of you. The business that's been selling online for so long, right, that is doing it in spite of the restrictions and the limitations, is far ahead of you, right? But we can see that telecommuting is working. To the point now where we're talking about the UK government is saying that by 2024, 50% of the population will be working from home. 50% from 7.4 or 7.5%. That is magical, right? Where are the excuses? What happened, right? Look at communication, right? Communication we already know was doing really well already. But ask yourselves, right? When was the last time that we organized ourselves and said, well, we have Zoom, we have WhatsApp, that we want to just organize ourselves and talk. Every time we wanted to meet physically. And then some people could not make it, right? And those that didn't have money to buy drinks and food, they will not turn up, right? But look at us. We organized this presentation, and I'm here talking to you guys. Before this, 99-year group, we've had at least 3 or 4 Zoom calls. This is something that we never did before. So even with being a space that was doing well already, if I had said in 2019, middle of 2019, let's not organize a meetup for Accra 99-year group. Let's do a virtual one, right? I'm sure somebody would have told me that, oh, it's not possible. Oh, the internet is bad. Oh, some people don't have smartphone, right? But here we are. We left the people that didn't have good internet behind. We left the people that didn't have a smartphone behind. And we are having a presentation regardless, right? So we don't have to carry everyone with us. E-commerce, right? I can tell you, right, and I can talk without revealing too much, right, that we're seeing exponential growth in places that we're struggling with. We have countries within the junior group where we've got triple, right, the number of people that were paying for things digitally, right? We've seen sales grow randomly in spaces that, so it's that these people just didn't think that they could buy online before. Suddenly, when they couldn't buy offline, they're forced to. So they didn't go digital. They were forced to go digital. But we had already gone digital by moving our business online. And so we are better positioned. I was listening to the BBC, and there was this woman who had a restaurant since 1999 in New York or someplace like that. And he was hell-bent on not going digital. And the way it is going now, even when business, the limitations are removed, he's probably going to shut his company, his restaurant down, because he didn't make any moves to go digital. She was stuck in saying, oh no, it might not work. Oh, the food is too high class food to be shipping to the delivery guys, because what if they shake the food and it doesn't look good anymore? What would my customers say, right? People stop giving excuses, and high-end restaurants are moving online, right? But a high-end restaurant that was online already is better suited because they already planned. They all have a whole ecosystem of processes that they can benefit from to grow. And those are the guys that didn't give excuses when there was no problem. E-learning. I have a very pleasant example here. My kids' school. I remember somewhere in October, September, I was asking them that they should consider moving to an online learning platform. It was not Google Classroom. It was something else. I've forgotten exactly which one it was. I think I asked them to get a submission, get a subscription.
Is it managed back? Is it managed back? Managed back?
No. It's a Microsoft product, right?
Oh, okay.
Okay. So I asked them to get a Microsoft product that includes a learning platform.
Teams.
Sorry?
Is it Teams? Teams.
It wasn't Teams. It's a learning platform. So don't worry about it. Let's not get hung up. Let's not get hung up about the service. But in any case, all my messages that I was sent to and by the way, my kids' school's headmaster is a Bleoobi. I wonder whether he's here. I'm not going to mention here and shame him. But it was like, okay, I've heard you, right? We'll look into it, right? And nothing happened, right? The 12th of March, right, is when there was an announcement that there was corona in Ghana. The next day was a Friday. My kids did not go to school. I didn't send them to school. I kept them at home. The Monday, right, the next Monday, we got a message that they were setting up an online learning platform, and once they set it up, they'll let us know. Wednesday, right, they sent us links to the learning platform, Google Classroom. I'm not kidding you, right? It took them 4 or 3 days to set this thing up, right? If I assume that they started looking into it immediately, right, the corona hit Ghana. That's what my assumption is. I might be wrong, right? They launched it in 4 days. And by the 5th day, my kids were now going to school on Google Classroom. All the assignments were being posted on there, right? And I remember asking, wait, I hope that we're not going to go back to the normal way of doing things when corona goes away, because this is awesome. Like when they give an assignment to my kids, I can log in and I can see what the homework is. I don't have to worry about the child leaving the book at school and then me having to call the teacher and say, can you take a picture of the thing and send it to me? And if he doesn't have it, another parent has to send it to me. I don't have to worry about any of those things. I can help my child with homework even if I were not working from home and I was in the office, right? And this is done so quickly, right? It's awesome. I don't know whether you guys can share any stories from your side about any of these experiences.
Yeah. So let me share my experience. Like I mentioned, manage back. So my kid also school's not in Ghana here. So before they were supposed to use manage back as per the curricula they are using. But then over a period, they were just being laid back. The parents will write to them. They will tell you they are trying to set up the system, trying to do this all over. Then they don't come back. So when the lockdown happened in Europe, immediately, just I think the next week, same thing like you're sharing, Google Classroom came in. They started flooding us with all the assignments, trying to update us, whatever is going on. Then we kept sharing. In fact, till today, that's what they are using. They have no option. So I wrote back to the school and I asked them the same question. Are we going to go back, or when you guys resume, are we still going to have access to what our kids do at school? Then they replied, they said, yes, remember parents were asking about manage back and all those ones. We are weighing the options, but we are hopeful probably we are going to manage both the physical and the virtual one. That's what, so it's like people don't want change, but at a point in time, they are forced to change. That's what happened, yeah.
Right, thank you for sharing. Anyone else? Maybe not on e-learning, anything else, telecommuting, communication, e-commerce. I'll talk about telemedicine and financial services.
Yeah, can I come in?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I will just share a little experience. Like just 3 days ago, I had to meet some first year GIMPA PhD class, PhD finance, about 11 students. We were wondering how it could be done without meeting physically. So I was just sitting at my dining hall and we just went on Zoom. They all came in. We were able to share all the materials. We were able to transfer knowledge. So I believe this thing has really put us on another pedestal that we really don't need to look back. Yeah, even after this, even after COVID, we should be able to move on with this online stuff. And like we were saying, this is one of the what went wrong. Sorry to draw us back, but I think attitude and mentality is the key. Like we're saying, the mindset, but attitude and mentality. The way some of us react to change is one. Most of the times we are not ready to change until it is very, very necessary for a change before we react. Another thing that we look at some of the times is some of the corporate world, like where I work at. One of the things I realized, like when I came in first, there was this manual procedure that was taking more than 30 minutes to get one done every day, and one full employee was assigned to just one simple thing, and the person was just doing this the whole day, and you wouldn't get it done. I had to try to automate it, and within some few seconds, it's done. Somebody who took over was like, "Oh, this small boy shouldn't do this for me to come and follow up." So, at the end of the day, what happened was, because he felt a small boy who just came from the university has tried to automate something, I shouldn't use it. And he wasn't using it, and he was still spending hours until he was free. So these are some of the facts. These are some of the things. We need to change the mindset. Otherwise, we'll go back to before COVID-19, even after COVID.
Okay, thank you, Nana.
Thank you very much.
So mine, this alumni. So I was a strong advocate for telecommuting. I've made proposals to my company asking them that we are engineers. The only thing we just need is a computer and then a VPN into the network to work. But it was something that wasn't really sitting with them very well. until when the coronavirus, we had the first case in Ghana. Then I was just there. Then my boss came to me and told me that, okay, this week on Wednesday, we are going to do a dry run. We want all of you to work from home, and then give us feedbacks as to how it's going to be. And maybe in the next week, the whole week, you might work from home. And then that was what the whole thing started. And then after we did that first dry run, then they asked us questions. There was a survey and everything, how it was, and then we gave our feedback. Only for the next week, they told us that everybody should just go home. And currently, about 97 or about 87% of all the staffs of that company are working from home. Even after the lockdown, we still work from home, and everything is working very efficiently. People are giving in their best, and I think it's something. And going forward, I know definitely after COVID, their perspectives are going to change when it comes to
let me ask this question.
Okay.
Do you think that after the corona passes, let's imagine that we are in 2021, do you imagine that the company will have be an office first approach, or do you think that it will be a home first approach, and then if you need to come to the office, then you have to give a reason why you need to come to the office?
Okay. Yeah, I think it's changing to that being at home first. So with this, there have been policies. There have been lots of policies after the COVID started, and they are now looking at because in terms of savings, in terms of the generators that they've been running, sometimes when there is light outs, in terms of the parking spaces, in terms of electricity and all those things, they are even giving us feedbacks that they've been able to save a lot on those, and they should be looking forward, even letting people working from home, because with that, it makes everybody's work much easier in terms of traffic and all those ones. So it's really working, and I think with the policies that are coming in, they are going to really change the way we work in that company.
This is a conversation that I have, so with the team that I manage, I have it with them fairly regularly. People are saving as much as 700 Ghana cedis a month because they don't have to get up and go and take trotro or taxi every day to work. And also because they're home, they eat at home. So they're not buying food at work. So there's a lot of benefits throughout. Obviously, it's not all positive because keep in mind what we said earlier on, that we cannot bring everyone with us. So we always need to kind of think about how we can also cater for the other side, those guys that are not able to, right? How can we ensure that it's not a case of, let me give an example of something that maybe in 2019, it would have been someone, right? So when I'm on a call with one of my workers, right, the direct report, I hear a goat bleating in the background, right? And I remember when I was at Fido, we had an issue with something on a platform, and we needed some guys to work from home over the weekend. We couldn't get them to work from home because we were worried that there will be noise in the background, right? There will be noise in the background, and what if a customer could hear somebody talking in the background or goat bleating? And I'm like, now in 2019, I don't care about the goat bleating in the background. If a customer kind of asks why there's a goat in the background, you simply say, I'm working from home, right? And it looks like we are a lot more forgiving of each other, right? So these same issues that, for instance, working from home, maybe you presented it to your boss wasn't inclined to implement it. Maybe for him, what he was thinking is that, what if I implement it and it blows back in my face? Would I lose my job because of it? Will somebody tell me that, yes, I knew that it wouldn't work, right? People are working from home, you expect them to work, they'll be roaming in town, not doing anything, right? But because we are willing to forgive each other a lot more because of where we are now, then somebody would implement this without worrying that it would have a negative effect on them. So it looks like this time, what has happened, right, the situation that we're in is also kind of a lot more forgiving of trying something and maybe even failing. And then going back to something like, for instance, we were on this Zoom call, and a bunch of people have been on there swearing at us, calling us Blackie and all those sort of thing. If it was a business call and this was happening, and it wasn't Corona time, you guys would probably not be as forgiving. You say, oh, because of that particular reason, right, we shouldn't do this anymore. But you will be a lot more forgiving now that you don't have that much of an option. So here we haven't really gone digital. It's been forced on us, right? The question is, beyond Corona, are we going to go digital? Are we going to put the checks in place to prevent somebody from jumping on the call and disrupting us, right? Are we going to learn from it and say that, okay, now we're actively going to go digital, putting restrictions in place, the same way that we talked about the financial services, that yes, you might be scammed and your money might be taken away, right? But it doesn't mean that you're going to stop using financial services. Check fraud used to happen. It didn't stop people from using fraud, from using checks, right? I'm going to jump on telemedicine and financial services very quickly. We talked earlier on, somebody mentioned that, I think I wrote it down here. Let me just refer to it. I think it was essentially saying that it's sensitive, the infrastructure doesn't support it well. What if somebody is doing surgery and the internet goes down? Right, we're saying you don't have to get everything on digital. But guess what? When the lockdown happened, doctors suddenly knew that, and hospitals suddenly knew that you could set up a consultation room on WhatsApp, and you could join a virtual queue, right? And when it's your turn, right, you'll be told who to talk to, and then you can do a video call with a doctor. And this is happening even right here in Ghana, right? We have the same WhatsApp that we use to forward foolish messages, right? We could have been using to do this. If all you needed to do was on a consultancy, right, was to go on a WhatsApp call, you didn't have to move your car or get in a trotro and go to the hospital. It means that all those years in between, since we've had WhatsApp, we've been doing something wrong. We've not been using it for those elements that we could have used it for, right? I have an example with a friend of mine who needed to go and get a subscription at Kolebu. She went to Kolebu, and apparently what they gave was wrong in terms of like the amount of the medicine that they'd written. So the pharmacist that she could get the medicine from couldn't give her the medicine. So she had to go back to Kolebu by trotro. She goes all the way back there and then comes back. Then there's something else wrong with the thing. So she basically has to go to Kolebu 3 times a day, right? Now, you and I probably know that Kolebu is not going to change that quickly, right? Right. So earlier on, somebody made a political thing, like there's no political drive. But we have to have the right to take things in our own hands. If you have 3 carpenters in your area and only one of them accepts more money, right? And he's more expensive than the other ones. Don't say, I want to save 10 cedis, and so I will use the one that takes cash. I do it myself all the time. When I get into an Uber, I will never pay cash. But Uber drivers hate card payment, so they're always canceling my Uber. But I take it in and I say, you know what? I'm not going to pay cash. So I plan ahead and say, you know what? I know they're going to cancel it, maybe 3 or 4 times. So I will try and book my Uber 30 minutes before I need it. Sometimes even the 30 minutes is not enough, but it's an active decision that I'm taking. Active, right? And consistently that I will only pay by card and I will not give you cash. So if you're not interested in my card payment for Uber, then you're not going to be my driver. So I think some of that mindset needs to change. Now, we talked a lot about the positive things. Let me quickly move to financial services. As much as we're seeing an exponential growth, right, in people using it more, using it to make payments, using it to pay for services and having them delivered, or remotely paying for services that don't need delivery. Traditional lending is practically dead. Who wants someone to come and sit in front of them to come and fill all these forms in it? No, they close, like most of these traditional lenders just shut down shop. But it doesn't mean that e-lending is also growing, right? It's the same fears, right? Somehow sits with e-lending as it sits with traditional lending, in the sense that if the person hasn't got a job, right, then how am I going to give them money? Because they're not going to get money to pay me back. But if you look at someone like, say, MTN with their quick loan, who are already online, or Fido, who's already online, all they will simply do is change the algorithm and say, you know what, don't give loans to people that you don't already know. Give loans to only people that were already borrowing from you. So the people that went digital already, by applying for loans with them consistently, have built a history with them, can get a loan. It doesn't mean that generally that they can give a lot more loans. They won't give a lot more loans to people that they don't know, especially in these times. But for the people that they already know, right, they would give those loans out to. And companies are on a cashless push, right? We have situations where, for instance, if you go on the Jumia app right now, you'll not see cash on delivery anymore. You're going to see Jumia Pay on delivery. And the idea is that we don't want you to pay cash because handling cash is not healthy for our delivery agents. And I would say that luckily for us, since this whole thing started, even though our delivery agents have been at the forefront of doing deliveries, not a single person has caught anything. Touch wood that it doesn't happen, but it's great news. So I think a lot has changed because of Corona, right? Now, I think this is, for me, this is the end of my presentation. I wanted to move into a space where we can discuss things. And I think one of the things that I've been saying since the middle of the slide is that it's a mindset change. So here is essentially the end of my presentation, and we can do a free-for-all sort of discussion on whatever you guys want to talk about in relation to any of the items discussed. But before we go into that, I would ask Yao, can you do the survey again? The same question, right? What I'm asking now is that based on what you've heard here, based on what you've seen regarding being a part of the portion of people that decides to migrate, right? Is it possible that you don't have to give up on 2020, that you can still achieve your goals by actively deciding to move some of your goals or converting them into a digital way and solving those same problems in spite of the situation that we're in? Is that possible?
Okay. So I'm launching the poll now. We'll give it a minute or two and you can answer. Do we see the poll?
Yes, I saw it and I've responded.
Okay.
We've lost about 10 people.
Yes,
was
so
that,
we
was
have...
was I that boring?
Well, we have a good number on here. So hopefully we get a good number voting. And afterwards, would you like me to share the results?
Yes, what I would like to do, and I think we discussed it before, if you can share and fingers crossed, I don't know how you guys thinking. I want us to share the results side by side before the first one that we did and after. And I want to see whether maybe we started with a very, very, very positive group already, and they are even more positive now. Or maybe we started with a very positive group, and somehow I've managed to convince everyone that 2020 needs to be given up. Or the one that I'm hopeful for is that even if we started with a not so positive group, that we are a lot more positive now.
Okay. So once we finish, you'll give me a minute and then I'll put that together.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so let's give it another 10 seconds to have everyone vote. Please cast your vote now. It's just one simple question.
This is e-voting, e-governance, yeah? Next
Exactly.
time we can make all our votes, we can have our meetings, group meetings on Zoom and take votes on all our actions this way.
Yep. So 5 seconds more and then I'll end the poll. Okay, poll is ended. So Faf, continue.
So I think, guys, what I want to do now is open the floor for any discussions. You can ask me a question. You can ask the general group a question. You can ask Yao, or you can just just share your thoughts on anything.
Hi, I'm Sule. I work with an ISP, a submarine cable operator, wholesale operator actually, and I've listened to the presentation. But in your opinion, do you hold the view that we have the proper ecosystem to be able to run a totally remote sort of environment where businesses and individuals understand that, look, you don't just go online without having things such as your cloud applications working well, your bandwidth being the right bandwidth to be able to support whatever you're doing. Where your data is hosted is also secured. Do you think, yes, we are driving towards being online and all that, but do you feel that at this time as Ghanaians, we appreciate the proper ecosystem required to get this done? Because see, being in the industry that I am, I interface with a lot of businesses, and you want them to migrate services to the online platforms, and they seem not to get it. Firstly, they see it as being far away, and the other issue also is that they consider it as too costly, which is the truth. I mean, we are in third world Africa, and we consume services that are not produced here in terms of IT. So are you of the view that this is something which can happen, overnight, 2 months, 3 months, or we are still not there yet?
Okay, so thanks for the question. I'm actually a little bit disappointed in the question, in the sense that if after everything I've said, you're asking this, then I feel like I missed a little bit in getting my point across. So I am disappointed in myself.
I joined a bit late. That's
okay. So let me say this, right? When we changed, right, when Corona hit, right, a lot of the excuses went out of the way. So there are a bunch of schools. I've seen Ghana Education Service, right, suddenly releasing a timetable, right, for schools to learn online, right, and they're going to put these TV shows on public broadcast. So even on DSTV, you can have it, on over-the-air channels, you can have it, right? So what it means is that all the excuses that we give, right, for not moving along, because not everybody can move along, right, is frankly rubbish, okay? If you can move 10% of the people along, you move 10% of the people along. Later on, right, another 10% will join. If you look at mobile money's trajectory, if we had stopped at 2014 and said, hey, we got 1 million people between MTN and MTN and Airtel, Airtel, Tigo, and Tigo Cash. Sorry, Airtel and Tigo Cash at the time, right? We wouldn't be here. So the whole point is that we don't have to wait for anything to be ready. My kids' classroom, Google Classroom, is not built in Ghana, right? But if somebody had built, and by the way, somebody has built a learning platform in Ghana. If somebody had built a learning platform in Ghana, right, and was pushing it, and they had like maybe 3 or 4 schools on it, right, and it was tailored for the Ghanaian curriculum, they would be in the forefront of getting Ghanaian schools that have the Ghanaian curriculum jumping on it, right? So we don't have to, the whole point I'm trying to make is that we don't have to wait until everybody's ready. It doesn't matter how unready the infrastructure is. It doesn't matter what the challenges are. We should try and work with what we have to do something. So let the people that want to give excuses, give excuses. Let me tell you about my kids' school again. When Google Classroom was set up, right, they also set up WhatsApp groups with the parents in them. Every morning, they will tell us what Zoom calls the kids are going to be on and what the codes are, what the passwords are, right? They said make it very, very simple. Let's say I have 2 kids in the school. So in one of the classes, maybe there are 15 or 20, I think 15 students there. And then there are still 2 parents that are complaining, right, that the thing is not working, it's not good, they should just stop the whole thing, right? And so you have to ask yourself, right, out of 15 parents, right, the parents of 15 kids, right, if 2 are complaining, does it mean that we shouldn't move forward? I don't think so. I don't think we should leave those behind. Now, this is in spite of the school having set up somebody as a point of contact that if you need any help with, you pick up a phone, you call the person, and they will guide you through everything, right? And these parents decided that it was better for them not to use it. They will throw all these kind of sort of strops, leave all sorts of messages in the group, which are frankly kind of insulting to the parents, right? To the teachers, and then they will leave the group, right? And so this is the mindset that I'm talking about, that if you can get 13 people along, take the 13 people along, leave the 2 behind. One positive thing is that the schools decided to reduce school fees by a very significant portion, because they also don't need to run electricity, they don't need to run AC. The teachers are working from home, they don't have to do transport, right? So they give us a discount because we're not using their facilities in the school as well. So there's positives to everything. So when it comes
Fred,
to, you go ahead, yeah?
The results is ready.
Okay.
You'll need to stop sharing so I can share.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing now. How do I even do that? Yeah, guys,
Okay.
so basically what I'm saying is that it's really our mindset that needs to change, rather than we expect the system to be ready before we jump in. Sometimes there are systems that we have to be ready before we jump in.
So
Example. Okay. Okay, so what am I looking at?
So this is the poll results I'm sharing now. Can you see, Fred?
We can see. This is
okay.
It's very good. It seems like the Accra Academy, the Bleoobi Old Students Association is very positive, because even before the conversation, we were talking about 80, like nothing has changed at all.
Yeah.
Nothing has changed at all. So I don't know whether it's just because you guys were already positive, or whether I didn't do a good exercise in trying to move more people from the yes to the no. So these two people.
I'll make a comment.
Sure, please go ahead.
I see that one person, you had 5 people thinking about it, and now you have 4 people thinking about it.
4 people thinking about it. So there was a move. Yeah.
One person has taken a decision. It's not good. It's not someone who has given up. So because the 2 is still 2 for those who have given up. So yes, there was a move positively.
I see. I would have actually liked to. And by the way, if you know you're one of those people that has given up, right?
Hello, Fred.
Hit me up in WhatsApp.
Hello, Fred.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, this is Amos. Hello.
Hello, Amos. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just joined the conversation in the midst of it. But I wanted you to address. I don't know whether you have addressed it in your earlier conversation or presentation. I just wanted us to see the thin line between,
okay,
learning at the various schools. For some of us, because of the nature of our work and then the kind of paperwork involved, in as much as our kids enrolled on this e-learning, when we are at home, because of the nature of it, that's when they also do the e-learning at their various schools. So unfortunately for me, I have someone that we are staying with, and the way I would have loved to interact face-to-face with the teachers, I don't have the opportunity. So I just wanted I just want to know if you can address that thin line. And you also made mention about this, the hospital, the e-learning, the consultation with the doctors and maybe e-prescription and all those things. But yeah, it's the case whereby you are sick and maybe you need a doctor to place a stethoscope or whatever, what device they want to put on you. How are you going to meet that line, that challenge? Because it has become virtual, and you may need to get a face-to-face contact with the doctor so that all those necessary examinations can be done. If you can address it.
Okay, thank you, Amos. Fred, before you touch on this, we set this webinar up for 2 hours. I know we have had the AAOBA president with us. I don't know if he's still here. I hope so. I would want us to wrap it up. We've gone past the 2 hours by 10 minutes already. In an attempt to respect your individual times, I would want us to wrap it up. And if a few people want to stay on to have a conversation, we can do that. I want to apologize sincerely for going a little bit beyond the 2 hours, but I want to believe that it's entirely worth it because of the conversation we are having. And so just to check if if the AAOBA president is here, I'd like him to do the closing remarks, and then we will proceed if we have to, just so that others who want to hop off can hop off. Is Bleoobi Bruce Atta still with us?
She lost.
Okay, well, so let me, on behalf of the AAOBA president and the AAOBA executive, thank you all for sparing 2 hours for this conversation. It's been great. I think this is just the beginning. And like I mentioned from the onset, this is the first of several conversations that will happen, and will happen at a regular interval so that we can keep track of our conversation. So I want to thank you all. Officially, I think we've brought it to a close. However, Fred is still available to do some explanations and answer some more questions. And we are happy to extend this perhaps by another 15 minutes. And hopefully by 9:30, we should be completely wrapped up and out of here. So over to you back again, Fred.
Thank you, Yao. Okay, so the question was around how do I have a how do you get to have a face-to-face with your kids' teachers? So, I mean, I don't know which school it is, but
no, that was not the question.
So the first one was telemedicine, right? And then the second one was
the second one was the telemedicine. But I wanted us to see how we can address that thing, like, because I have to go to work, and then the kids have to do their online class in the morning. And most of the times, because I miss that face-to-face interaction with the teachers, I just wanted us to see how we can address that thing, like, because in as much as this is the way we are going now, it seems like for some of us, we stand to lose a lot. Because whenever I come back, fortunately, we get the recorded ones, but I don't know what even happened live, you understand? Because I will not be there when I'm at work. Right. So I just wanted, I don't know whether you are spoken around that. And then with the telemedicine or whatever you said, e-consultation with the doctors, I was just asking, for medicine, sometimes it will require you meeting with the doctor.
Hello, Amos, sorry, I think I got you the first time, so don't worry about it. Let me touch on it. Okay. So I think one of the points that I've tried to make is that we don't have to move everything to digital, right? So if you are dying, don't be sitting at home saying, oh, I want e-consultation. Like, if you know that you're in such a pain that you need to go, right? Then you go, right? But there are some things that would happen. For instance, like, let's say that you've already gone, right, to the hospital, and you've been given some ointment or whatever to treat something, right? And you need to just come back and tell the doctor how it's gone. Like, sometimes they do that. They say, okay, let's do a checkup in 2 weeks, right? Suddenly, when Corona hit, we knew that it was possible that the person didn't need to come back to the hospital for a follow-up, that they could just simply book a WhatsApp consultation or a virtual phone consultation, where the question simply asked is, okay, so how is it now? Has the rash gone down? Is it this? Is it still painful? Is your arm still hurting? Like, right? So what is happening here is that we need to pick and choose the things that we can move digitally. And the things that we cannot move digitally, we leave them as it is. But it doesn't mean that we stop there, because constantly we need to improve on things.
So,
right?
Fred, let me come in. Let me chip in something.
Sorry, you need to kind of introduce yourself so we know who's speaking.
This is Kede talking. Let me chip in something. So during these COVID times, for instance, all the specialists in the major hospitals, they were not forthcoming, so they wouldn't come to the hospitals, but they still had to do specialist consultation. So one of our colleagues contacted me. He wasn't well. He had some chronic problems. I actually introduced him to one of the specialists. I'm just giving this for our colleague to have a clarity how it works. Okay, so actually what happened was that we linked them. They spoke on Zoom, on WhatsApp. Eventually what happened was that the guy had to run some tests. Immediately the doctor tested a test to the patients. Then the patients went ahead to a laboratory. In fact, the doctor prescribed which lab he has to go and do the test. After that, the test was given electronically to the patient. Then he also forwarded to the doctor. The doctor did the prescription. He didn't have to meet the patient. Today, I think yesterday, our colleague called me that his stats and everything, the vital stats, everything is very good. And he has never met this specialist. So my brother, this is an example of the e-consultation. It works. Only that we have not.
And let me add something to that, right? So even before Corona, right? I know that I've done this before, right? So for instance, if my son was sick and I've gone to the doctor, and somehow, because I think I know more than the doctor, right? Which is a very stupid thing to do. Like, you know, when the doctor tells you that, oh, this is what is wrong, this might be what is wrong. But because it's happened to you before where a doctor has kind of prescribed something for you that is wrong, I will find a doctor that I know, because I have doctors in my family, I have friends that are doctors. I will hit them up and I'll say, this is what is going on here, right? I'll describe the symptoms to them and say, oh, maybe it's this. Because of what you've described, I think it's that, right? And this is doing all of that without sharing what the other doctor has said. Because what I want to do is I want to get a second opinion without the new doctor knowing. So I was already doing some sort of e-consultation, right, before all of this, right? What we need to do is to start making it a part of the official process. So, of course, like what you said, is that it's not for everything, right? It's not for everything that we can use it for. And if you ask me this question on every single process, I will tell you the same thing. You don't have to use it for everything. The same thing for telecommuting. It's not everybody that can work from home. Some people don't have internet in their area. Some people, the electricity, it goes off all the time. Some people have too much noise in the area because next door to them is somebody who likes to play Logo music, right, throughout the day. Or there's a blue kiosk next to them. So you need to allow for those people to be able to come to a place. But what you need to do then do is that reduce your costs by renting a smaller space, which means that you have a lot more money to spend on your customers, to spend on your employees and other things, right? So it's the same thing that I'll tell you when you raise this issue on any topic, right? You don't have to move all of it. The second one is on your kids and the school, right? So this is what I would say on that. Before Corona, right? My kids' school didn't have a WhatsApp group. They said they didn't want a WhatsApp group for parents because previously they had a WhatsApp group for parents and negative things were happening there. Parents would sometimes talk to teachers in a way that they shouldn't talk to, right? Which would always happen, whether it's pre-Corona or post-Corona, right? I give you examples of when it was happening. So they shut it down, right? But in spite of that, what I would do every year when my kids move into a new class, starting from the first school that they were in, before the school that they're currently in, I will take the teacher's WhatsApp number and I will talk to the teacher on WhatsApp. I will call the teacher myself. So again, it's not about being forced to move digital. If you need to reach out to the teacher directly, do it. If you need to talk to the teacher directly about something, about specifically to do with your children, do it. Don't wait until the school moves to digital before you move digital. Because the only other way I would have been able to talk to the teachers would be physically to be present. Sometimes when I drop off the kids, I have to go to work. I drop them off and I have to rush to work. I don't have time. But I can pick up the phone and I can call them when he's not in class. I can arrange with him. Obviously, it means I have to find local fuel for him. Every time that the school is going on a break, right? I'll find some local fuel for him. And this is something that I do for myself, just for my kids. So if you have to be at work when your kids are supposed to be on their e-lessons, right? Think of it this way. When they were going to the classroom in the physical school, were you there? You don't know whether your child was going to that classroom and sleeping. You have no idea, unless the teacher tells you. You don't know whether the teacher was your child was like Kede, who actually no Bello, was always like Idiasi Academy. You have no idea of that. But with this new method, maybe you can get the feedback very quickly. You can see attendance of whether your child actually even turned up for the Zoom lesson, right? So you need to make it work for you somehow. You are on this Zoom call, which means that you are somehow a little bit technologically inclined. Reach out to the teacher directly. Reach out to the headmaster. Band together with some of the parents and say, hey, we want a way that when you send the work to the kids, I will know. I want a way that I will know whether my child was able to join the Zoom call. Now, obviously, an example is like, if this had happened, if your kid's school was doing Zoom lessons or video lessons or e-learning 2 years ago, you wouldn't have this problem because they would have already been used to it. And you would have already been used to it. You have a plan. The only reason why you're struggling now is because it's new. But hopefully, a year from now, you will not be having these excuses. And I hope you don't say, it's not going to work. And so I give up. I'm going to move my children to a school which doesn't do e-learning, right? And the other side is this, and something I mentioned earlier on. If the school refuses to move, if the teachers refuse to move, think about the future that your kids are going to grow up in. Do you think that your kids are growing up in an environment where computers are center stage of everything they do? Or do you think that they're going to live in an environment where sometimes they have to do things physically? If you have to move your kids from that school, move them. Make a decision, right? Choose to go digital with your kids. Don't let the school making a decision which doesn't align with where you want your kids to be, hold your kids back, right? So a lot of these decisions are in your hands. The same way that you talk about maybe the government not moving, figure it out yourself. If you have to choose the carpenter that has accepted mobile money, choose him. If you have to choose the school that accepts and gives you what you need to support your kids remotely, choose that school, right? I think that's the most that I can say about this one.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so I believe, Fred, you've done a lot of justice to the subject that we put up today. And I want to once again thank everyone for taking time to stay on and to contribute to the conversation. Hopefully now you appreciate, the fact that we live in an e-world and pretty much almost everything is electronic or digital, or can be electronic or digital. Let me take it's 5 minutes to wrap up. We have time for just 2 questions. And please, those questions must be really brief. Otherwise, we can wrap up now. Are there any thoughts? And if you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand with the raise hand feature in there.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, Ishmael.
Yeah. Charlie, great presentation. There are a couple of things I want to put across as well. Sometimes the decision surrounding going digital is not necessarily from the union, also dependent on the variables within the industry the person may be playing.
Ishmael's
Consider the
connection is
financial
bad.
sector. Guys, can you hear me?
Your connection is bad, so we can barely hear you.
Yeah.
If I can repeat what you're saying to everyone, you're saying that if we consider the financial sector, sometimes it's not possible to go digital, right? But not to cut you, right? But what I would say is that it seems that we're still kind of stuck in the excuses, right? So the financial sector is not the only place that we need to move digital, right? So let me give an example, right, of a reason why, if in spite of whatever is happening in that industry, right, you yourself can choose the elements of that industry where you can go digital, right? So yes, I'm not saying that there are no restrictions. There are restrictions, and in fact, wherever you go, there will be restrictions on some or many things, right? But is there a way around it, right? So if it's like, I can imagine, for instance, before Corona, right, my kids already had an iPad. They already had a computer that they could use sometimes, right? Which means that as soon as they move to the e-learning.
Guys, is it any better?
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yes, it's much better.
It's a little bit better, yeah.
First, you actually nailed it. You see, on individual level, there is no excuse. Okay? But then when you start looking at industries, when you start looking at corporate entities and stuff like that, then a number of factors come to play. Because we all know that the customer is king. In industries, if the customer is not moving, any attempt of yours brings a cost. Okay? Let me give you a scenario. Thousands. If you guys got together and started
Sorry, Ishmael, the connection is gone bad again. Ishmael,
okay.
Sorry, the connection has gone bad again. We don't have a lot of time, so yeah, maybe we can have somebody else. And as for me, what I can do is that I can stay.
We actually don't have a lot of time, unfortunately.
Okay.
It's a minute.
You wrap up, and then let me position myself well.
Okay,
cool.
Right. Well, the other side of it is also that when I wrap up, then we are ending the meeting, unless of course you guys want the follow on. But again, just to reiterate, I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful for your presence on this call. It's the first of many series to come. We're hoping to run this fortnightly and with different and varied speakers on various topics. The first theme that we are actually focusing on is digital, and we will be looking at different dimensions of digital. This session was to more or less set the tone for that conversation, and I want to once again, on behalf of the AAOBA executive, thank you, Bleoobi, Fred Frimpong, for taking time to prepare and to deliver this session. We really appreciate it. And also to thank each one of you for joining the session. And hopefully you have learned something or you have taken something from it, and we can do better with our digital life. I hope over time, more senior Bleoobi will be able to join us on this discussion as well. There are a number of questions in the chat box, but we will prepare those and hand them over to Fred for some written answers. And we will share that alongside with portions of the presentation that we can share in our respective year groups. So once again, it is an interesting conversation. I wish I could continue it. I wish we could just continue throughout, but that will be going against our tenets. We want to stick to time as best as we can. And so unfortunately, I will have to end the session on this note as 9:30. And so thank you all very much.
Yeah. I've seen that a couple of people were sending me private messages with their contact details. I will not be able to, because I missed so many of them, I will not be able to respond to everyone and take your private details. But what you can do is that you can share my contact details, anybody that wants to reach out to me by WhatsApp, my WhatsApp number. And I will be able to, they can reach out to me directly. So unfortunately, I'm sorry if you've messaged me with some details and you want me to contact you, please reach out to Ananiel and he will give you my WhatsApp details. You can reach out to me. All right. Thank you very much, guys, and thanks for joining.
All right. So you all have a wonderful evening. Good night.